The reason why you shouldn't consider that is because you should consider the success of an applicant. Because of affirmative action, Black Americans graduate from law school at the bottom 25% of their classes, largely speaking. And we don't want that. We want Black students to succeed. We want every student to succeed, low-income students to succeed. But you have to put them in scenarios, in places where they're likely to succeed. And lowering your standard to admit somebody of a socioeconomic status or race would not help them do that. In fact, it would harm their graduation rate and excellence.
Well, as the case also points out, the standard isn't necessarily lowered because students are all admitted. The question is whether race can be an added consideration, a tipping point.
No, the standard is lowered. The standard is lowered. The standard is lowered. As the student premier admissions data shows, an Asian has to score 273 points higher on the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a Black person. So the standard is lowered for Black Americans.
Kenny Xu, thank you for your perspective. We really appreciate you joining us today.
MIT released some data that confirmed our worst fears about the Supreme Court. The university's incoming class will be significantly less diverse than in previous years, and that's thanks to last year's ruling that gutted affirmative action. MIT, one of the first to release enrollment data since that ruling, says its percentage of Black students dropped to 5% from 15% last year, and the percentage of Hispanic and Latino students dropped to 11%, down from 16%. Overall, all racial and ethnic minority groups had a decrease in enrollment except for Asian Americans, who had a 7% increase. And the university actually saw this coming. It was among several universities and colleges that signed an amicus brief to the High Court 2 years ago in support of keeping race-conscious admissions. Joining me now, Eddie Glaw Jr., James S. McDonnell, distinguished professor at Princeton University. He's also an MSNBC political analyst. Professor, it is great to see you as always. So this is not a surprise to anyone. I think when SCOTUS struck down affirmative action, you and others warned us about the impact this would have on students of color, saying that we would begin to see a kind of segregated higher education landscape. Your initial reaction now that we have seen these initial new numbers from one university, and what are you hearing from others in academia?
Well, first of all, it's great to see you, Eamon. We knew this was going to happen, as you said. I suspect that the data will be similar at the other Ivies, my own institution, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, Penn, Cornell, and the like. We should probably see this across the board in terms of elite institutions and ranking or top state public institutions. We knew this. We knew the data. We saw what happened in California. We know just 10 years after Prop 209 was passed, only 96 freshmen, Black freshmen, were admitted to a class of over 4,000 at UCLA. We saw a 44% decline between 2006 and 2022 at the University of Michigan. And so this was, in fact, the expected outcome. And what's so tragic about it, there are those folk who are reading this outcome as an example of what happens when merit is taken as the principal deciding factor, when in fact, this is actually proving the opposite, Amy.